Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, or whenever you happen to be listening to this. Welcome to the Film Realist Podcast, the film and TV podcast from a complete nobody that's hopefully for somebody. I am your host, Kyle Naranya, here for episode 52. Hold for applause. That's right, I'm recording by myself. This is I have made with the guests that I've had on the show. We have made 1 year's worth of episodes. I think it's a somewhat decent accomplishment given the fact that, again, this is a one-man show in terms of all of the production, and I'm really happy to have accomplished this. Podcasts are something that require a significant amount of work. Obviously, you're putting in the time for the content viewing as well as the content creation. So if you have enjoyed this show, please hit me up on Twitter. And I'd like to start a dialogue as to why you've listened to this show for 1 full year. I would really appreciate that. Of course, you can tweet at me, at Kyle_Naranya, or the Film Realist podcast Twitter, which is probably the best place to reach me, but I am on Threads as well as Instagram, and there's a Facebook page if you actually want to use those as well. So thank you very much for being here for the 52nd episode of the show. I'm going to be reviewing 2 things, and they're going to be a little bit different than normal. Ahsoka is officially halfway done. The 4th episode aired a couple days ago, time of recording, and I'm going to be reviewing all of One Piece. It is a show that premiered, date of recording, last week, and I've managed to get through all 8 episodes, so I wanted to talk about these 2 things. With all of the movies getting delayed, it's given me an opportunity to watch more television, and I wanted to talk about it. So again, I'm going to be giving I'm not sure yet, but I'm just going to give you warnings now. There likely will be spoilers in both discussions / reviews of Ahsoka and One Piece. So if you have not had a chance yet to watch either of those shows, you've been warned. They've been listed time codes will be listed in the description, so you can avoid that if you've had an opportunity to only watch one of the shows that I will be talking about today. So let's start off with the newest thing being Ahsoka, the mini-series, I believe it's labeled as. That's what it says on Wikipedia, so that's what I'm going to go with. Let's start talking about Ahsoka. Alright, so as mentioned already, Ahsoka has had 4 episodes release, each being around 40 minutes, and this is a show I was very much looking forward to. I'm not sure if you do know this. Well, I am a huge fan of Ahsoka Tano as a character, introduced in the Clone Wars. What was supposed to be just episodes was eventually released as a movie. I actually have the movie. To move. I've got too many props, too many Blu-rays, too many DVDs. Don't tell my wife. I have the film, which is... Where is the film? Did I put it downstairs? It actually might be in this box set, being of the... Did I put it in here? I did. So this is the box set of seasons 1 through 5, but George Lucas seemed to really like the animation, so they took the first 3 episodes, being right there, and released it as a film, which was critically panned, of course. And ultimately, I'm going to put that back. Oh no, everything's falling over! This, of course, will be edited out later. And then the show continued on Disney Plus continued to air on Cartoon Network, which eventually wound up being one of the only things that was considered canon after the Disney purchase of Lucasfilm. The character wound up being arguably one of the main focuses of the entire series and was eventually brought into Star Wars Rebels, which I own all 4 seasons of that. I thoroughly enjoyed that show. One thing that was really interesting was the distinct animation styles between the 2, and the aesthetic was quite different. Oh, things are falling over. Again, one-man show. And so Ahsoka was a character who became somebody that I really did appreciate. I have a bunch of different Lego versions of the character, and I was very excited for this. Dave Filoni is somebody who's been working in animation for 20 plus years now, if not even longer, and I was really excited to see what is essentially a live-action continuation of Star Wars Rebels. There was a percentage of the fan base for Star Wars Now, this is not shocking to anybody who follows any of this brand IP, intellectual property on the internet, that it can be very vocal for things that they do not like. And on top of that, there is a percentage of the fan base that only considers the live action films and TV series to be canonical, even though Lucasfilm continues to say that the animated television series of Clone Wars, Rebels, and Resistance not being something I thoroughly enjoyed, to be canonical. And I really like those shows, and I think it's some of the best Star Wars we've had since the Disney purchase. The final 4 episodes of Star Wars Clone Wars, which specifically focus on where Ahsoka was during Revenge of the Sith, is about the Battle of Mandalore and is some of the best Star Wars, period, in my opinion. So expectations were quite high. And I have to say, for the most part, I think that Ahsoka has managed to meet those. Rosario Dawson, now finally given the lead, being the lead of her own show, does a really good job playing this character who, again, if you followed all the way through her journey of all of 7 seasons of Clone Wars and several appearances in Star Wars Rebels, has lived through arguably the worst period of the Star Wars universe ever. Losing her master to the dark side at the end of the Clone Wars, essentially having to become a hermit from all of the canon of the original trilogy, obviously because she did not exist in those storylines, and then coming out of the Rebels, saving the universe, and now dealing with the next oncoming war. And given the fact that she was such a vital member of the Clone Wars, there are several reasons why she is now the way that she is. I think there are plenty of fan service moments in this show if you are a fan of those cartoons. I think they are handled better than they have been more recently in some of the Mandalorian content. I really love that first season, but seasons 2 and 3, I don't think managed to hit that sweet spot of the first season, where building to the eventual reveal of Grand Admiral Thrawn, who has been shot off with Doctor Who space whales. I can't remember their actual name. I probably should have looked it up. They are... what are they called? I don't remember. I should look this up. Star Wars space whales. The Purrgil, and that's where Ezra and Thrawn are. And one of the aspects that I love about Dave Filoni's use in writing in the Star Wars universe, and why I also really liked The Last Jedi, controversial, I'm aware, but they weren't afraid to do different things with Star Wars. Rebels had, if you're watching Ahsoka, a world between worlds that essentially was able to access all of time in the Star Wars universe, which actually did result in the resurrection of the character, which was a phenomenal scene in Rebels where we get to see Ezra save Ahsoka from a fight with Darth Vader, which is a phenomenal sequence at the end of season 2, and bringing that character from the prequel era past the original trilogy was something that I thought was quite incredible, because you are managing to effectively write around the fact that these characters don't exist in the original trilogy. It's also something that I've really appreciated in how they've been able to manage continuity in Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which I talked about with Kofi a couple weeks ago. And the anticipation for what Thrawn will mean as the heir to the Empire post Return of the Jedi is really exciting. The character was originally invented post Return of the Jedi, and the fact that we're going to get almost 2 parts of that character's story is really interesting and something I cannot wait to see. Lars Mikkelsen is the voice of the character, and I'm really looking forward to seeing him get to portray that character in live action. But at the same time, we also get to see some other Rebels characters brought into live action to justify them for some people who think they aren't canonical, with Sabine being played by Natasha Liu Bordizzo and Mary Elizabeth Winstead playing Harrison Dula. I think they've really managed to capture what makes those characters fun and unique. One of the aspects that I love so much about Rebels is, while it manages to have archetypes we are used to in the Star Wars world, with a Jedi, a pilot, a larger-than-life creature, Zeb, who we did see in The Mandalorian, they are still their own unique characters, as opposed to just carbon copy cutouts of the versions we had from the original trilogy. And the relationships are significantly different than the ones we experienced in the original trilogy and the thus far after. I'd really like to see those. It's so unfortunate. Obviously, anytime anyone passes away, it's sad. But the fact that Ray Stevenson is giving such a phenomenal performance as Baylan Skoll in this, somebody whose allegiance we don't really understand yet. It seems to be like a Jedi for hire, which is really cool. Not a Sith, not a Jedi, orange lightsaber. It's really cool. Shout out to friend of the show, Rob Keyes, who I know helped establish that was a thing during the press for Ahsoka way back when. And of Ivana Sakno, if I'm saying that wrong, I apologize. It's a Ukrainian last name. So if I've said it wrong, my apologies. I'll hopefully get it right for the finale. As Shin Hati is really cool. Getting to see the master and apprentice dynamic at the same time with Ahsoka and Sabine is really interesting, given the fact that Ahsoka has never been a master for anybody we had seen on screen before. She had obviously been around Ezra and Kanan and Grogu, but we can now sort of understand the reasonings behind why maybe she wasn't before. Needless to say, her relationship with Anakin wasn't something that was a overwhelming success the first time. And then obviously things went the way they did. They went a little Darth. Bad pun, but you know what? I think it's funny regardless. But yeah, I'm really enjoying the show. I would really appreciate longer episodes. I think 40 minutes sometimes can feel too short. But the fact that we're building to something where we are going to be leaving the actual galaxy, which is a big deal in the Star Wars universe. Everything's happened in the one galaxy far, far away. Or a long time ago in a galaxy. Yeah, far, far away. I almost thought I messed that up, but I didn't. I got it right. Pretty sure. No, I got it right. Anyways. So I'm enjoying this, and the fact that it finally seems like we're getting focused, building to the Thrawn threat that could affect all of the potential post-Jedi shows is something I'm looking forward to. It's unlike Marvel, which kind of is doing this multiverse thing, but we don't really know what we should care about and what we shouldn't. Thrawn is the big bad. And overall, I've enjoyed this show. Obviously, it was incredible to get to see Hayden Christensen interact with Ahsoka. It was so close to my dream, which is a flashback to Clone Wars era of these three, getting to see Ewan, Hayden, and likely a younger actress playing a younger version of Ahsoka, potentially voiced by Ashley Eckstein, would have been incredible. And it's still possible given the fact that Ahsoka is currently in the world between worlds. So I wouldn't say that the first 4 episodes are perfect, but given my high regard for Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, I think this manages to be more successful in the fan service, but at the same time, I think the story is really interesting because it's talking about somebody who doesn't necessarily have investment in the Empire. With Baylan, he just wants things to be better, and he doesn't see a new Galactic Republic or an empire being the reason for how did he describe it? But a peaceful world requires destruction. And I think that's an interesting dynamic. And I'm really hoping that in the back 4 episodes, we get to explore that a little bit more. I think the action's been quite fun for the most part. And the use of a Mandalorian Jedi is really cool and something I could not want, or I would really love to see more of, and clearly we're going to, with Sabine continuing her training and using the Mandalorian tech at the same time with a lightsaber is different than somebody using a dark saber, which was not intended to have any force-sensitive user, period. So overall, I'm enjoying it. Let me know on Twitter if you are enjoying Ahsoka. Do you think it needed to be a movie, which is how I feel about Obi-Wan? Let me know. You can the Twitter accounts have been listed already. So that's all I'll have to say about Ahsoka. Next, I'm going to jump into my full season review of the live-action adaptation of the longest anime of all time, One Piece. All right, this is not going to be controversial, I don't think. So, One Piece, for those who are not familiar, is the longest, if not one of the longest-running animes of all time. It is a show and manga that I had watched, I'm going to say, next to nothing previously to this. I remember, and this is already going to be controversial, growing up in Canada, for the most part, dubs were my exposure to the anime of anything. Pokemon, Dragon Ball, Digimon, Beyblade. I'm trying to think what else would have come out in the 90s. I'm sure I'm missing things, but they were typically dubs. And so that whenever I have watched any other anime, it's typically been a dub. There are versions of subs that I have managed to watch since then, but there are versions of the shows that I'll only watch in the dubs. Digimon, Dragon Ball, Cowboy Bebop. For me, I love the dubs, have never been able to get into the subs. If you're a subs person, I commend you, but when you grow up with certain voices for those characters, I think it's really hard to hear different ones, particularly when it's in a language you don't understand. And then you're required to be reading. So then, for me, I love the voice work of the dub actors in those shows that I've mentioned before. One Piece, when I should have looked this up, but I don't remember specifically when it hit North America, the dub era. And the very first time, I remember watching the pilot, which I believe aired on either Fox Kids back then, and that could be wrong. I'm not a One Piece historian whatsoever. And so I have friends who have kept up with this franchise the whole time, but for me, I knew next to nothing. I knew Luffy was stretchy, but the level of weirdness and insanity that can happen in this world was something that I was very unfamiliar with. And so I have friends who I trust their opinions on that they thought this looked good and it was faithful adaptation of a substantial amount of the manga if I've been misinformed, but it feels like quite a bit given how much is in the first season. And so watching the trailers myself, I thought this looked somewhat compelling, and needless to say, I sat down and over the course of a couple days managed to watch through all 4 episodes. All 4. That would be half. Ahsoka was 4, One Piece was 8 episodes. I half expected it to be 10 given the fact that how the season carries along throughout the story, but I was immediately captivated with the entire cast. I just listened to this, and I apologize if I mispronounce this, but Iñaki Godoy as Luffy is phenomenal. I think before I say that, it is become abundantly clear how easily it is to mess up an adaptation of an anime to live action. Ghost in the Shell, Death Note, Cowboy Bebop, countless others, Dragon Ball Evolution, that being one that was truly heartbreaking for me. But this show somehow manages to bring in all the elements you would expect from an anime and still manages to work in live action. And that balance is really difficult to do correctly. Again, look at all the other stuff I've mentioned and why that doesn't work. But the charm of this is its characters and them interacting in general. I talked about this in the Star Wars section, or the Ahsoka section of this week's episode, where I loved the Star Wars Rebels crew, and having the first couple episodes for this be about Luffy meeting Nami and Zoro and Usopp and Sanji was great. And they managed to pack in so many interesting things about the world and interesting experiences with all the characters that I was immediately hooked. And given the fact that I know next to nothing about this, it was a great introduction to all that's possible in this world and what the focus is for everybody in the show. I like how each character has a specific point of view with their upbringing, as well as the fact that they each have a dream. That's Luffy's big thing, is he wants his crew to focus on their dream and he wants to help them achieve it. His, of course, is to be king of the pirates, which ultimately he wants to do, and he wants to be a different pirate than what we would assume to be a typical pirate. And Iñaki Godoy manages to make Luffy so earnest and entertaining, but he's never annoying. And the fact that that's possible with a character like this, I commend this young man, younger than me, because it's such a great character that clearly the anime and the manga fans have fallen in love with, but that doesn't necessarily translate well to live action. It's a much more difficult medium to manage all of those characteristics and that personality successfully. And I think he does that 5 stars all the way through. Each character I really enjoyed, and while at times there can be conventional story elements in the relationships where somebody is a double agent, or there's some backstabbing, or people have different motivations and they have different things that they want to do, how it manages to weave those things all together is really, really fun. And I really like this world because of it does feel like almost anything is impossible. The fact that Buggy the Clown can essentially be Arms Fall Off Boy from the DC universe, but essentially every limb can break down into even smaller pieces is wild. And at times it can feel very Joker Heath Ledger-y. It's still so much fun to watch. And again, I'm baffled by how they managed to ride that wave of it is live action, but we're going to get as close to being a cartoon as possible, and making that work it's chef's kiss because it has failed so many times. It's very similar to adapting a video game and just completely missing the point of the characters because you think, oh, they did this one thing, that's what they are, or not understanding them whatsoever and writing Dragon Ball Evolution. But, we can't all be winners, but this certainly is. I think you don't need to have read the manga or watch the anime for this to work for you at all. It is a fun adventure tale with some very interesting things that can happen, but similar to a lot of fantasies and sci-fis, if you're on board with this isn't our world, and each time something extraordinary happens, that it can establish the relative realism within its own world, I think it'll work for a lot of people. I'm not exactly sure what the viewership is for this. I'm looking it up right now because I'm not. So numbers point to being stronger than Cowboy Bebop, so that's good. But I'm very hopeful that given the fact that the anime fans and general audiences and critics really enjoyed this, also is something that should be said given the fact that there have been so many failures. One thing I'm critical of with this show is, while I mentioned it's so exciting as we get to meet the other characters, and that feels slightly conventional, but they're so interesting, each individual character, Nami with her relationship with the island that she's from, and how she winds up being revealed to be working for, now I'm going to miss his name, because Arlong, the Fish King pirate, which is not a crazy reveal because it's teased quite significantly that she's working for somebody. It doesn't wind up being the Grand General, or what is his role? There's a lot of, with the Marines being the quote-unquote empire throughout this, who are against piracy. I should find that really quickly. Can I find Grandpa? What is he? Vice Admiral. Sorry, I got the wrong military position. But that is an interesting character dynamic, given the fact that he doesn't want to arrest Luffy because he's a pirate. He just doesn't want him to be a pirate because he wants him to be a Marine. And so having that familial relationship does affect all of his decisions, as opposed to just a quote-unquote just evil bad guy following Luffy around. While we certainly get a ton of antagonists that Luffy and the Straw Hat Pirates encounter is really fun and entertaining, but that is certainly not the relationship. The action in this is very much anime branded, and so a lot of the times the characters are doing things that, again, you would not see in a John Wick or in a Warrior HBO Max Please Renew for Season 4 television series, or something that's played more realistically with what humans are capable of. But again, it rides that line with things are being done that are extraordinary and potentially superhuman, but this is a world that allows for these things. Even the minor characters that we get in each episode are someone that I'm really looking forward to seeing more of, and I feel like you wouldn't have them in these one-off episodes if they weren't more significant later down the line. Shanks, the pirate that Luffy wants to be his mentor, has a great relationship, and he clearly seems to be a very different kind of pirate. While he's not similar at all to Captain Flint from Black Sails, another show that I absolutely love, but a character who clearly has a lot more going on than we get to see at first is something I absolutely love, and Black Sails explored it perfectly, and I'm really hoping that we do get to see more of Shanks moving forward. Again, I have no idea. Obviously, I know that I could go and look up the anime, or I could look up manga to see if I wanted to answer any of these questions, but given the fact that I really enjoyed this show so much, I'm waiting, and fingers crossed that as the live action gets to make more seasons, that I'll get these questions answered further down the line. I know a lot of fans who fall into one particular adaptation. Invincible was an example of this, where I think there was a large percentage of the fan base that went and read the comics. I really like this adaptation, so I'm going to let them tell this version of the story to me. In my viewing experience, that's been the case for a number of adaptations. Spectacular Spider-Man is my favorite my favorite television version of Spider-Man, period. And it managed to adapt a bunch of different storylines and weave them together to tell one of the best 2-season Spider-Man arcs, period. What else do I have to say about the show? The visuals are great. Clearly, the budget was used. It's shot, ironically, similar to Warrior and Black Sails. It's shot outside of Cape Town. Yes, I'm struggling. I apologize. Can you tell it's been a while, or it's been a little bit since I've made an episode? Where did they film this? They filmed it Cape Town. And so getting to see all the ships and the sets for this really adds a level of believability when you get to see a giant pirate ship that's shaped like a fish that's also a restaurant. And the action is quite compelling. My biggest criticism, I think, is that when we start to settle in on Arlong, the fish captain, as the villain for the back third of the show, I don't think he was as compelling as the other villains we'd experienced so far. He's not as interesting as Garp, and he's not as interesting as Buggy the Clown for sure. And I think while Luffy's interactions with him are really cool, and we get to see a quite fun action set piece at the very end, I just found him to be kind of one note. He hates humans, we get that, but we don't really get any more from him outside of the fact that he thinks fish people were mistreated by human beings, which again could be a really interesting thing to explore, with the species being treated one better than the other. But ultimately, he hates human beings, and that's all we get from him. I really don't know if I have anything else to say. I know this probably sounds like it was really quick and really brisk, but it's a great 8-episode watch. I had a lot of fun with it. I was invested in each of Luffy's crew to see how what they wanted to achieve was going to be either concluded, and I would say most of it wasn't, because of the fact that this is a thousands chapter long series. But the goal in mind of this season and how they were going to achieve it, specifically with the Grand Line map being the center of their whole world, is where they believe they can start looking for the One Piece, which is Gold D. Roger, I believe is his name. Gold Roger, sorry. His treasure, which ultimately set off this world on a world of pirates, which they weren't before. And so you have the Marines, kind of like similar to like the Empire of Star Wars, who want to the East Indian Trading Company, if you've watched the Pirates of the Caribbean films, wanting to shut down all of piracy. And so there's so much to explore in this world, and there's a ton of loose threads to continue with each of the crew and each of the characters, that I'm really looking forward to a season 2, and I really hope that we do get one. So I don't think I have anything else really to say about it, other than I can't wait for season 2. If you did watch One Piece, are you looking forward to a season 2? Who do you think the smoker is if you haven't read the manga or watched the anime? Because a guy who smokes cigars and a pirate already sounds interesting to me. Well, a little stereotypical, I guess. I'm curious as to who this guy is. Luffy now has a bounty on him, and apparently it's the biggest in the East Blue, so I'm certain that that's going to lead to some phenomenal interactions with other pirates who are mad that they are not the most wanted pirate in the East Blue. So that will do it for my One Piece Season 1 review of One Piece. I don't really know where to get out of this, so I'm just going to stop right now. Thank you so much for listening to episode 52 of the Film Realist podcast. I don't really know what I'm going to be doing next week with the strikes still being effective. Hey, Bob Iger, maybe pay people a livable wage. That would be great. And all the other studio execs, maybe don't hire PR companies and just do the right thing. That would be great. Are affecting exactly what I'm going to review. I guess I haven't done a Gran Turismo review yet, so I'll probably do that next week just because I haven't had a chance to talk about it yet because I really did want to talk about Ahsoka and One Piece. So it'd be safe to pencil that in. But again, thank you to each and all of you listeners who listen to the show, who interact with me on social media. It really means a lot. I like to share my love of film and television with all of you. And if you are enjoying the show, please like it, follow it on your podcast platform, give it 5 stars. The email for the podcast is listed in each episode description if you'd like to send a longer form of something. If there's a question you'd really like me to answer that you think would be a great subject for an episode, you can send it there or you can put it in any of the social medias. Again, thank you so much for continuing to listen to the show, or if you're a first-time listener, thank you for checking out this episode. I will be back next week for a review of something, and probably Gran Turismo. I'll see you next week.